Alright, in this video we're going to show you how to get this grounding kit installed, and just ignore these wires back here. Okay, so here's the grounding kit, and there's going to be different lengths of wires and different terminals crimped onto the end. That basically tells you which location they're going to go into, and I've marked out all the locations that this needs to go to. So the first one is this stock ground point right here, and then another one is going to be to the intake manifold, and you could probably use this one or this spot, and then the third one will be to, it's going to be kind of difficult to see down here, that goes to the top of that coolant pipe. And then the last one, which I will have to show you from underneath the car, is going to be to the starter bolt, which we'll have to jack up the car a little bit, get under there, because as you can see, I have a bunch of stuff in the way here, so I'm not going to be able to get to it from the top side here without having to basically remove a bunch of this stuff. So jacking up the car, taking the wheel off seems a little bit easier. And one of the things that that I'm going to do basically is we're going to connect all of these four terminals first, and then I have a stiff wire that I've kind of fished through the backside, and then I'll just pull that through, and then we'll connect it to the battery ground. So one thing that I have always told people on the Genesis Coupe is that the grounds are absolutely terrible. I've probably helped, I don't know, 5 or 6 people that have had various kind of gremlins, and so if I can get close enough here, you'll be able to see that the reason this looks kind of weird is because I actually take these bolts out, and then I use kind of this hard buffing wheel on my Dremel, and you buff off all of the paint that is under these, and then you use a silicone grease. You can see I just wiped some of it off to seal it. That way you're actually getting the terminal to contact bare metal, and you're going to have a far superior ground, and this silicone grease is going to seal it to make sure that you don't get any water in there, so you're not going to get any corrosion on that. And I've gone through, and this ground that I have here goes to this relay, which is for my reverse switch. So basically when I shift into reverse, the car doesn't do that stupid beep sound. So normally you wouldn't have this lower one, you're just going to have this top ground. So I've done it to this ground, and because my intake manifold is coated, I removed all the paint for that one, and I've gone and done the same thing to, I don't know if we'll be able to get it in frame. I've done the same thing to the battery ground over here, buff off all of the paint, and then there are some other grounds like here, and there's one down here. Basically every single ground I have removed the paint and then used silicone grease to seal it. And basically, because like these wires I told you to ignore, it's because I'm wiring in a Haltech 1500, and basically I figured that adding some additional grounds will only help me out. Usually I've seen these ground kits as kind of snake oil because they have been around for 20 years that I've been doing car stuff, and nobody's ever really put out really significant data on it unless you have basically really bad grounds, like I was saying on the Genesis, because basically all of these ground points, the way that they're grounded is they just drive a the stock bolt, which basically cuts the paint off of the threads. So the only contact you're getting is where it cuts the paint off of the threads. That is a major reason why um, adding this grounding kit and actually buffing the paint off so you have a bare metal contact is going to be the route you want to go. So I'm going to get started on that, and when I have some of these grounds pulled off, I'll show you what it looks like with everything kind of buffed down to bare metal and these wires installed. Alright, so I'll do my best to show you this part, but you can see I pulled the bolt out from here, and basically how everything is like nice and shiny behind it. So it would normally be like this, and then I usually clean up the side, the contacting side of it as well. And then when this goes down, what I'll do is just put a ring of silicone grease right around that. That way you can see how much better this amount of contact for grounding is going to be rather than essentially just the threads. So I'll get this one bolted on, I'll get the other ones bolted on, I'll show you that, and then we will take a look at the one for the starter. Okay, so basically to get everything on the top side, you're only going to need a 10 millimeter. So you can see I have this one in here, and you'll notice I'm always more of a fan of functionality rather than making it look super clean. I mean, my engine bay obviously isn't the best, but everything works as good as it's supposed to. So there's the first one. I have the silicone grease around it. You don't need much, just enough to seal everything off. And on this one down here, unfortunately I couldn't get anything in there to buff off the coating from that black part, but this is raw aluminum, so I'm just assuming that the threads have enough contact to provide a sufficient ground. And you can see I pulled out one of them here, and this is so that I can show the style of this bolt, if it actually focuses well. Anyway, but basically this is designed to kind of cut through the paint when the car is painted from the factory, and that's what most of the bolts are. So that's basically why the threads here are the only thing that normally make your ground. So that's why going through and removing the paint on all your sources for grounds is going to give you a far superior ground. And if you've been chasing any sort of electrical issues or have any sort of intermittent issues, that ideally would solve that problem. Okay, so I don't know if I'll be able to point to it, but you can see that one bolt that's sticking out. That's the top of the starter. So I suppose you could probably use the bottom bolt, but I wanted to get it as far away from the whatever steering, and it would honestly be a little bit easier to install if this was like a U shape. So you could probably either, I don't know if I would recommend cutting this, or if they would put a different one on it, or if there's a reason, like if it would vibrate loose or anything like that. But the only thing that then kind of sucks is the fact that you have to take out this entire bolt and then slip it through. Oh, and of course I put it on the wrong gosh. Okay, well, I have to take it back out again because you're definitely going to want to run the wire on the other side of this loom so that it doesn't stick down so far. So we'll cut to that and I'll show you what it looks like actually installed. Alright, can we kind of see it in there? Yeah, you can kind of see it. There we go. The wire goes above both of those looms. So this is definitely the most time consuming part of the job to do this part. If you don't have an electric ratchet like I do, it'll take you a little bit longer. But overall, you shouldn't spend probably more than about 30 minutes doing all this. Alright, so like I mentioned before, we're at this ground of the chassis. I added a bolt here to the intake manifold, and then we're down at the coolant pipe. So I will then grab this, this is just like a solid copper wire. I'll tape it to the end that goes to the battery. We'll fish it through to this side, bolt it to the battery, and then we'll be done. And you'll have just about the best ground setup that you can have for this, now that we have essentially gone through every ground, buffed the paint off, sealed them with silicone grease, and we shouldn't really ever have a grounding issue after that. So okay, actually one quick thing here. So I wanted to show it all finished up. So what I decided to do was run it behind the battery, and this nut was actually really hard to get off. I had to use some PV Blaster on it and let it soak for a while. I don't know if everyone's is like that, but that's why this piece looks a little bent. So yeah, I ended up running it behind the battery, and then one of the wiring tricks, I don't know if we'll be able to see it, but basically after I fished it through here, all I did was take this, oh yeah, you can kind of see it right here, and then you just twist it. And what that does is, instead of having 4 loose wires just hanging out, it twists them all together. Yeah, there you go, you can kind of see it. So now when I have to come back through and do a couple quick zip ties, it's only one big group of wires. And what I had to do was, in order to get it around the back of the battery, is I had to change this one on the coolant pipe, and that terminal ends up getting bent a little bit. So there you go. Ignore the other rat's nest of wiring that I have to figure out, but that is all of the grounds. Stay tuned for the future when I'm getting this Haltech installed.